Good morning, everyone. I hope you had the opportunity to join yesterday's panel. We had a great kickoff to yesterday with David Lennon moderating our gene therapy panel. We're going to take a similar approach this morning. We'll be talking about the amazing achievements that we've seen in the cell therapy industry, as well as some of the challenges. And to start off, I'd like to give my esteemed panel up here the opportunity to introduce themselves. So, Paul, maybe we'll start with you and we'll work our way down.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Staid. I am the head of cell therapy supply chain at BMS. I've been at BMS for about 13 years with a lot of focus in biologics. For the last 18 months, it's been focused in cell therapy supply chain. And this is my first ARM conference, and it's been really excellent. So happy to be here.
Welcome. Pascal.
Pascal Touchon, I'm the CEO and president of Biotherapeutics, a leading company in the field of allogenic T-cell therapy. And I'm a passionate advocate about cell therapy changing the life of patients. I've been into the Kymriah story for a number of years and other stories before. Pleasure to be with all of you today.
Thank you.
So I'm Cintia Piccina. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Adaptimmune. I've been in the commercial space for many years in pharma, but in the last about 5 years in cell therapies. Had the opportunity to work with at Novartis with Kymriah, fell in love with cell therapies. Then Bluebird and 2seventy Bio in partnership with BMS. Opportunity to launch Abecma, and now working with Adaptimmune and trying to make it work in the solid space. With our first product, so really excited to be here and among wonderful colleagues and mentors as well.
Friedrich.
Hello there. Good morning, everyone. I can barely see you because of the lights, but I'm sure you're there. My name is Friedrich Finckenstein. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Iovance Biotherapeutics. Iovance is a company that is dedicated to innovating, developing tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte therapy to patients with cancer. We're excited about being in the process of a rolling BLA submission for what we hope might be the first one-time administration cell therapy for patients with solid tumors, melanoma in this case. We do more than that, and I'm excited about talking more about that as part of this panel.
Excellent. And last but not least,
Sure,
Diana.
thank you. Yeah, hi, my name is Diana Brainard. I'm CEO of AlloVir. You can hear a lot more about it this afternoon at my company presentation, but in short, we're a late-stage allogeneic, off-the-shelf, virus-specific T-cell therapy company. And it's great to be here. This is my first in-person meeting on the Mesa, and I'm loving being here physically.
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you in advance to all of our panelists for joining us this morning. So let's start off with all the positives. We've all seen amazing achievements in cell therapy over the last few years. We've seen it being applied to new indications. Some of you commented on working on solid tumors, for example. We've also seen a lot of different approaches to how we can bring cell therapy to the market. This question I'm going to ask each of you, and Diana, maybe we'll start with you, but as you look back at the last few years, what do you see as some of the most amazing achievements of the industry?
Sure, well, it's hard to pick one thing, but I think where I would focus is that breaking ground with autologous and then the shift to allogeneic to me seems incredibly exciting and important just in terms of scale and access for patients and the ability to then think about not just hematologic malignancies, but as many of us are working on moving into other types of tumors, also treating other diseases outside of malignancies, such as viral infections, as we do, and even not represented on this panel, but getting into autoimmune diseases. I think the potential of cell therapy, particularly with an allogeneic approach, really now is kind of limitless, and we're really moving with a lot of momentum towards that.
Absolutely. Friedrich.
Where to start? It's just been such an amazing ride since the advent of immunotherapy to cancer therapy, which obviously is not recent, but it still baffles me that we all together have been able to make that happen. The step then from modulating the immune system to actually using the immune system as a therapeutic and translating it into cell therapy, another huge step. Making it happen for hematologic malignancy, huge step. I think what's happening now, which is translating that biology into an even more complex biology, which is going after solid tumors, is what excites me the most. Obviously, I'm kind of sort of tunnel vision here, but again, taking now the steps and everything that we've learned from hematologic malignancy and target engineered platforms to either making that happen by finding appropriate approaches, finding the targets that you need for that, or taking different approaches like we do and going after polyclonal T-cell therapies is huge, and bringing this into not just one solid tumor indication, but more of them across lines of therapies, and in a global development approach, taking it out of the academic center setting. All of these are things that are going on, and all of them are going on at the same time, and we're all part of it. So it's awesome.
Exciting, Cintia.
Yeah, so for me, I think, at Adaptimmune, we actually have the opportunity to work both with the allogeneic platform and autologous in solid tumors. So for allos, it is really exciting. It's in research, and we are in the process of building the manufacturing allogeneic facility now in the UK, so really to see how much it's growing and advancing. And then in the autologous space, get into solid tumors. And not only looking at the data, but as part of my job, super excited to build the commercial platform to make sure that these products can reach patients, which it was complicated in hematology, and it's another level of complexity now in solid tumors, but just having the opportunity to build that platform is really super exciting, and it's just so close. There's just so much happening right now that it's exciting to see.
What else can you say, Pascal? What do you want to add?
Maybe reflect on the past. First of all, there are many more people now than a few years ago in this type of role, so that's an evidence that the pace is accelerating for cell therapy. I mean, it's an important year, because 10 years ago, Emily Whitehead was treated and saved by the first CAR-T. And now, as you know, 10 years later, she's considered cured. And I think that's what we're here for, is to cure cancer and to cure the disease. And Emily is a kind of evident goal of what we're trying to achieve. It was just 10 years ago. 5 years ago, the first CAR-T, Kymriah, was approved. And that was really the development of the pioneer, Carl, Bruce, and others that have dared to go into patients and save lives. Initially, just in a few, then the first product approved allowed to save many more lives. Then in just the space of 5 years, 6 other autologous CAR-T have been approved, and 5 others, 6 in total. And that means not only a few lives, hundreds, thousands of lives have been saved worldwide by these therapies that are really curative therapy. And that's amazing. Now, we are accelerating the pace even more now, because if you think about the next 12 months, I believe that, and hopefully, as we always say, that 3 to 4 additional therapies will be approved that are not CAR-T. It will be the first allogeneic T-cell therapy that is going to be approved very soon in Europe. Going to be the first engineering T-cell therapy that hopefully will be approved, the first TIL hopefully approved as well. So if you think about that, and maybe one other, if you think about that, it's this accelerating pace, which I think is amazing, and that's why we all do together, is to be able to bring these therapies to patients, to bring them through the very complex situation from a regulatory perspective, to get the regulatory authorities, the FDA, EMA, others in Japan, in Australia, Canada, in other countries, to understand how different are these therapies from what they have seen before, and how we can really now move even beyond autologous CAR-T in, as I say, 3, 4 different type of modalities, going to change forever the possibility to cure or at least to improve quality of life in many diseases. So a very exciting time indeed for the industry.
Excellent. All right, Paul.
Yeah, for me, at BMS, we had 2 autologous cell therapy approvals in the first quarter last year for 2 different types of blood cancer, Breyanzi for lymphoma and Abecma for myeloma. So the excitement is about making these products real from a commercial perspective. And we've had US approvals and launches. We've had EU approvals and launches in Germany, France, and in Switzerland, and Japan approvals and Japan launches. So that's a huge team effort. We're standing on the shoulders of the champions that have got us through the BLA, and how do we advance and scale these therapies going forward to maximize reach for patients. And it will be a journey, and it's also a journey in terms of how these products evolve from a CMC perspective, from an indication perspective, and it's also really exciting to see how the potential for these products is expanding to new increased patient populations as well. So I like to say every week's an adventure in cell therapy supply chain. It's been true for about 70 weeks in a row so far.
Well, and we'll come back to that adventure in another couple questions, but Pascal, you mentioned this acceleration of approvals, and certainly we see more programs in phase 2 and phase 3 coming to market than we ever have. It certainly suggests a certain level of maturation, perhaps of the cell therapy industry. What do you see as signs of the industry maturing, or do you see signs that the industry is maturing?
I don't know what maturing means. Some part of it, yes, maturing, other part is not maturing at all. But I think it's what we've seen is, one thing is important, is first of all, over the last few years, we've seen the importance of the academic origin of many cell therapy diminishing, with a lot of biotech companies and larger companies starting their own development from scratch. So in the past, a lot of the first development were started in academia and then even at the clinical stage, and then moving to the biotech, the pharma industry. So the challenge was, how do you transform an academic product into an industrial product? Now, what I like in that maturity of the industry right now is that you can develop, and we have many products in Atara that we develop from scratch ourselves. So they are, from the beginning, being designed as a product to go to a BLA or to an MAA in Europe and be approved, and then be made available for thousands of patients or tens of thousands of patients. So that's really a big change, and we've worked with many partners. The other aspect is I've seen a maturity of the partners that biotech and pharma can have in the supply chain, in the CDMO, CRO space. I mean, many of you are in that type of activity, and that's so important for us in biotech or in pharma to have the possibility to rely on partners that are not just discovering things with us, but they're also starting to bring their own expertise after a number of years. So that maturity is also very important, maturity of the network, of the ecosystem of cell therapy. And we see that not only in the US, but also in Asia, in China in particular, and we see that in Europe as well, and many other countries. So I see that as a positive. Now, we're still at very early stage, and as I said, bringing the first allogeneic T-cell therapy, as we'll be doing the first approval in the next few months, bringing other type of very innovative therapy, everything is a new step. I mean, when you go for the first time, whether it's Iovance or Adaptimmune or self with the FDA or the EMA, I mean, we are the first one, we are the pioneer. So here it's not mature. You know, there is no guidance, we have to work together in a constructive way with the regulatory authorities to find solutions to something that they have never seen before. And of course, that will then create a step for the next one to come and to be able to be successful. But the first one, it's a unique situation, so it's not a maturity from that point of view.
Absolutely, and we'll come back to partnering. I think that's a really critical point. And Friedrich and Diana, I'd love to get your perspectives on that same question.
Yeah, I think my comments will be somewhat of a clinical development leaning comment. I think what we are seeing is that now, in addition to the improvement of the technology platforms that are mostly relying on a proof of concept, doing something that has been done before but better, I think we're now seeing an additional dimension here where we are bringing these approaches to broader patient populations. We're thinking about other tumor types, indications within those tumor types, and how to develop within those tumor types. We're seeing combinations with standard of care therapy. How do we make that happen? Because we kind of have to deal with it. Many of the patients out there have therapies available to them, and as a clinical developer, I know, you can't always replace. You sometimes have to add on and work yourself up from there. So how do we do that? How do we do classical drug development, clinical drug development with these novel therapies? I think that's that is one additional dimension there. So if you look at our pipeline, you see additional tumor types being pursued, but even within those tumor types, we are pursuing different indications, different lines of treatment within a tumor type, and we're doing this either with the monotherapy of our therapy or with add-on immune checkpoint inhibitors, because that's your entry. So I think that is an element that probably a number of years ago we haven't seen. We were thinking of going with monotherapy, cell therapy product in the last line, because that's where we needed to make the proof of concept. That's not necessarily what we do anymore.
Excellent, thank you. Diana.
Well, I'll keep it brief because I agree with what's been said, and just emphasize that doing new things is hard, and everyone knows that. Certainly if you're in drug development, you know that, but even in life, right? And there's a learning curve, and I think that some of the growth of the later stage programs reflects the incorporation of the learnings scientifically, for sure, clinically, absolutely, and understanding how T-cell therapy or CAR T therapy works and how to mitigate some of the toxicities, how to handle a development program, how to accelerate it. And then also there have been regulatory learnings as well. I think that we found as we progressed our lead program through, we have multiple indications, multiple phase 3 studies, but each time you have those interactions with the regulators, they understand what you're doing and you understand what they're looking for as well. And I think that as a field, we all benefit from that increased knowledge and shared understanding. And we see that even in some of the new regulatory policies that have been issued, and the focus on providing more resources within CBER to cell therapy, separating it out going forward in 2023 into its own subsection and separate from gene therapy, which is important but also quite distinct. So I think these are real advances that will continue to enable companies to move quickly when there's something promising to advance through the pipeline.
Excellent point, and hopefully some of you heard some of the comments over the last couple of days of the work certainly that ARM has tried to do in supporting that. So let's pivot a little bit to some of the challenges. Obviously, everyone in this room I think is pretty excited about the progress, but let's talk about some of the challenges. So we want to bring cell therapy to more patients, and we want to do it ever more efficiently. One of the things that we need to do is figure out how to drive efficiency and scalability into our cell manufacturing processes. Paul, as our supply chain expert, I wonder if I could have you comment on some of the challenges, but also how are you thinking about trying to address the challenges?
Yeah, it's a question we think about quite a bit with the two first-generation autologous commercial therapies. And we recognize it will be a journey. So our starting point is, in fact, this first-generation autologous. So with autologous, there is an aspect of scale out. We talk about scale out versus scale up. And scale out is a reality. So we are building facilities. We are qualifying new production suites. We are managing through careful protocols, ramps within those production suites. And that's an ongoing journey. Last year, this year, we'll be continuing for the next couple of years. We are building a facility in Europe, in the Netherlands, so globalizing the supply chain. Within then, these backbone first-gen processes, how can we drive productivity? And I've been listening carefully to a number of the sessions through this conference about next-gen technologies, and it seems to be at the unit operation level, and where are those bottlenecks in the process, understanding that, and what can we do with a better, faster cell counter, with differences in material handling. And the labs, I would also emphasize the labs as bottleneck areas is something, and that gets into method robustness with first-gen analytical methods that are used for release of vector in some cases, or in drug product. So that capacity, that robustness is a key part of scaling and making the supply chain reliable. Next-gen processes, so more productive vector processes. working very hard on that. We realize that we're not, what we have approved today is not going to be exactly where we're going to be to get to 10,000 patients in a number of years for certain indications. So what about those next-gen drug product process opportunities? Those are very high comparability hurdles. We realize that in taking those learnings on board, engagement with the regulatory agencies, a lot of activity on that front. Sort of drawing from my biologics experience, to me the holy grail is platform, and a platform vector process, a platform drug product process, platform analytical method, platform information technology systems, process analytical technology, so we see trends, correlative analytics. So that's the future from my perspective, is taking all these constant learnings, evolving our organization, our process, our infrastructure, our capability, ultimately for scale, for robustness, for speed, and for cost. That's our mission.
That sounds like it will keep you busy for a little while. Cintia, would you like to add anything onto that?
Yeah, and I think maybe another element, and agree with everything that Paul said, face the same challenges, looking at the similar situations to try to overcome them. And there is also an aspect of external with the treatment sites. Because now that we see, in terms of scalability, more products becoming commercially available, as we work with the treatment sites, they also have their own capacity for apheresis and also ICU beds, because most of it is still inpatient administration. As we bring new products, each one of them has sometimes a new technology platform, a different procedure, REMS, qualification, certification, recertifications. And so we are seeing, as we engage with them and getting ready to commercialize, a little bit of an overwhelming, just in terms of the number of new processes that they need to absorb. So I think as we think about scalability, in addition to all of the challenges with manufacturing, how can we engage with our customers as well and try to work to simplify the processes, ensure greater consistency, to hear from them, because we do have a lot more experience today than we had when these products were first launched. Yeah. So the need for hands-on training in some of the treatment sites is not as strong as it was 5 years ago. And so how can we work together to try to simplify and do what's needed to allow for greater scalability on the other side as well?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it'll actually require many of you on the stage and all of your companies to work together to make it easier, right? We can't go to these sites and ask them to do 10 different things 10 different ways. It's just impractical, I would say. Obviously, there are challenges even outside of the manufacturing processes. So Diana, maybe I'll start with you. What are some of the other challenges that you're thinking about?
Sure. I think building on what Cintia said around the capacity at academic centers, I mean, that's something that we see as an allogeneic cell therapy product. There are a lot of, I'm sure, scientists in the room, a lot of people focused on manufacturing. I don't know how many hospital administrators are here. I don't know. If you are, raise your hand. But these are the people that make decisions around the size of the cell therapy lab and how much capacity they have. And oftentimes they might not understand the value to their patients and to the hospital, even when you have full excitement and buy-in from the physicians, from the nurses, and from the patients. And so this is a place where a lot of education and early education needs to come in to enable that. And then I think also on the payer side, that's in the news a lot. And cell therapy is still in the early days of demonstrating how can you get the right reimbursement model for the unique value that it brings, particularly for curative products that may take you on an entirely different path for a patient in terms of being life-saving and incredibly cost-saving as well. And there has been recent progress made for sure, but that's a place where we still need to do a lot of education within the government and on the commercial payer side too.
Absolutely. Pascal, you want to add on anything?
Maybe a different type of challenge that we overcame recently. We are running a phase 2 randomized controlled trial in multiple sclerosis. And it's a placebo-controlled trial with cell therapy, with an allogenic cell therapy. So how do you bring cell therapy to physicians that do not have so much experience, even knowledge, and maybe fearful the type of therapy we bring to the neurologist? How do you bring cell therapy to outpatient clinic? Because the good thing with that treatment, there is no pre-treatment. It's just a 5 to 10 minutes IV infusion, 2 hours monitoring. So it's like a monoclonal antibody in the way it's being administered. So fundamentally, it's cell therapy. Of course, it's a cryopreserved DUO somewhere that needs to be thought and used in patient. But the way to use a cell therapy is exactly like a monoclonal, even simpler than some monoclonal that are being used today. So how do you bring that practice? And we are now about 40 centers in Australia, Canada, and the US. And it's interesting to see that after the first reaction that is a bit, I'm not sure I want to do a study in cell therapy as a neurologist, then when you overcome that, then they start to accept it. They say, yeah, that's easy. I mean, it's as simple as a monoclonal. So that's, we believe, the way we should evolve as a field for allogenic cell therapy in particular, to make them like monoclonal antibodies. There is no reason it should be that different, especially if you have the right back office to handle all the complexity of the cryopreserved cells and things like that. The rest of it should be like a monoclonal and should be like any traditional biologics and should allow to treat many more patients. The other challenge was placebo. How do you make a placebo of cell therapy? So that was, we've done it, but still work to do there because it's not that easy to make a placebo of cell therapy. But if you want to go into this type of disease, you need placebo. You need to have something that looks like cells and it's not really cells.
That is an interesting challenge. I hadn't thought about that one. So some of these challenges, not all of them certainly, could be addressed by new technologies or innovations. Cynthia and then Paul, I wonder if you could comment on any areas you feel that innovation is needed or new technologies are needed.
Yes, there are several. I think we still need to continue to work on efficacy and durability in particular. I think we are all striving to get to a cure, and there are a lot of exciting technologies that are being explored, so really looking forward to see how, especially in the solid tumor space, things are going to progress over time. So I would say efficacy is a big one. One that I find important is also lymphodepleting therapy, because the need for, if we can not need lymphodepleting therapy at some point in time and find ways to bypass that, because it really restricts the number of patients that we can treat and you know, all the complications with side effects as well. So I think that would be a good opportunity to continue to advance and be able to reach more patients. And I also think that the more that we can continue to work on the manufacturing improvement, from turnaround time, consistency with the products, and really no or very little out-of-spec products, those are all things that will, you know, definitely be very clearly beneficial to patients. So I think any technology that can help in some of these areas would be awesome.
Excellent, duly noted by, I'm sure, everyone in the audience. Paul, what would you add?
Yeah, I would, so I go back, what I need from technical operations and process development, I need scale, I need robustness, I need speed, I need cost. So it is about taking a real world look at Breyanzi, at Abecma, and the full value chain, and what are those priorities, and how do we then drop, you know, with those priorities, including new technologies, new technology opportunities, how do they help us manage that product roadmap going forward? So it's product specific. It's different when you look at different products. You see different priorities and roadmaps. It becomes an orchestration of our book of work and our capacity for technical changes and improvements. So it's hard to peg one thing exactly, you know, because there will be unit operations improvements. We will improve cadence. We will, with a certain unit operation, be able to get 2 lots in a 14-hour shift instead, or 2 shift instead of 1 lot, kind of things. And if that's the bottleneck, that's going to translate, but then the bottleneck will show up somewhere else. So it's really understanding that system and focus on priorities and methods, analytical methods, and making those more robust is definitely, potency and things like that. Also a big area of need, and next gens for other drug product manufacturing, vector manufacturing. We see those coming. Those are being worked on. And so, being ready for those as well.
There's been a lot of discussion over the last few years about centralized manufacturing, decentralized manufacturing. Paul, I'll give you a break for a second, but I'll come back to you. Friedrich, I wonder if you would comment on sort of how you're thinking about it. What are some of the advantages, disadvantages to those approaches?
Again, very much through the TIL glasses, I think what we've done, we decentralized within a centralized model, right? Remember, TIL therapy for decades was reserved to be done at academic centers where patients had to come to the academic center. The product was made at the academic center where the patient was to be treated, and limitations were, in addition to long turnaround times, long production and manufacturing times, also the fact that these products were not cryopreserved, so they had to stay, again, patients had to come to the center in order to receive TIL therapy. We stayed with the centralized model just because of the expertise you need in order to produce these TIL therapy products. However, we decentralized by accelerating the manufacturing process from what was 6 to 8 weeks to 22 days, and with the final product that's a cryopreserved product. Both of these things were things we needed to in order to be able to conduct multi-center and global trials, which you need, again, here's the clinical developer speaking, to mature something and to make it real and bring it to patients. We have invested early into our own manufacturing facility, the Iovance Cell Therapy Center in the Navy Yard in Philadelphia, and are now getting ready to use that to support, obviously, commercial manufacturing, but it's already manufacturing our drug development products. So back to some of the challenges that came up before now, it's really matching demand and capacity, and addressing not just commercial demand with a commercial capacity, but also continue to support drug development with next-gen products, right? So we are in the process of bringing next-gen versions of our TIL therapy into clinical trials. We just dosed our first patient with a PD-1 knockout TIL therapy product. We want to produce these novel products at the same manufacturing facility, so we need to somehow keep it separate but together. And that's our model. It's scalability within a centralized model.
Yeah, and clearly a lot of challenges to solve. Paul, you were talking a lot about taking cost out, driving efficiency.
Right.
Does that drive you towards a centralized manufacturing model?
We are moving towards regionalized supply chains for the benefit of turnaround time and reduced logistics. So that takes a lot of complexity out, and we anticipate having the scale of patient demand to support in-region operations, making those investments, because it is a very significant investment to establish, GMP operation and the whole quality system that needs to go around that, from all the incoming materials, qualifying your suppliers, controlling your process, QC methods, QA release, managing deviations, the logistics components, chain of identity. It's a massive set of infrastructure. It's a bit invisible because it's in documents. It's not in equipment and ceilings and walls, but it's a core part of control. So we do, that's a big investment. That's we're operating with global supply for certain aspects from global facilities as we build towards regional operation. I know there's the bedside or the hospital level. It's hard for me to see that from a commercial cell therapy perspective. It's a fascinating concept that maybe we can, how could we make that happen over time? I think that's far away from a commercial perspective, maybe more closer from a research perspective.
Absolutely. So Pascal, I think, were the one who commented earlier about partnerships. So let's pivot to talking a little bit about that. I imagine a lot of folks in the audience are at some smaller emerging companies, and they might believe that they need to or should partner with, for example, biotechs to sort of continue to bring their therapy to market. Love to start with you, Pascal. What advice would you give folks on partnering with biopharma as they're trying to sort of accelerate bringing therapies to market?
Yeah, I think there is in some ways not much difference with cell and gene therapies and other type of biotech situation, where you have your technology, your pipeline, your assets, and then you have to decide whether you want to develop all that by yourself till commercialization, or you want to partner, and the balance between the two. So that's not something where we can reinvent the wheel. It's a strategic decision taken with boards about what's the best way to create value for patients and for the company. Now, what may be more specific to cell therapy, there are a need to have so many capabilities within the company that it becomes strategic, but from a different perspective. It's not only about value creation, it's how you're going to do. Is it better to leverage a partner capability or expertise or just availability, or to do that by yourself? And I think that question is very unique to cell therapy in particular. And then when you come to the development, you know also that you need partners anyhow, because there are things you cannot do by yourself. I mean, for example, we have a donor-derived platform. We need donors. So we are partnering with Be The Match to be able to have access to the donor we want with specific HLA type. We need also to ship our product that are cryopreserved and to get them delivered. So we need partners for the shipment and the delivery of that. There is no way that any biotech can do either the donor part or the shipment part. Now, the other aspect is commercialization and even development. I mean, we've developed our first product by ourselves, completely by ourselves, globally. We are doing studies across 4 continents. But then, from a commercialization perspective, we decided to partner, like in Europe, where we're going to get the approval very soon. We have a partner, Pharm, that is a company that is already established, but doesn't know anything about cell therapy. And I think that's also the way to think as a biotech. It's not because you are in cell therapy that you need a partner that knows cell therapy. I mean, with all due respect for BMS and partnering and others, I mean, it's great to have a partner that is in cell therapy, but you can partner with someone that is not in cell therapy if you handle what I would call the back office and all the complexity of cell therapy. And then the partner is really focused on pricing, reimbursement, access, and then, of course, sales, marketing, and medical affairs. And that's what we're doing in Europe. I mean, BFAB is going to launch successfully the product because we handle everything else. Okay. We handle the distribution and logistics, we handle the manufacturing, we handle the ability to find the right cell line for the right patient, and so on. And then the other aspect is when you go to large-scale development, like what we're doing in multiple sclerosis, we know that we can handle phase 1, 2. But if you want to move to pivotal studies in multiple sclerosis or other autoimmune disease, where we have a lot of development possible here, we need a partner. Because we are talking then about not doing a study in 100, 200, 300 patients, but is 1,000, 2,000 patients across the globe. And that's the type of capability that a partner could bring. So again, there is a strategic aspect about value creation. There is the more tactical aspect about what you decide to do by yourself, to ask the partner to do, and how to create a network of partnering that you can manage as a biotech, like a director orchestra, to be able to make sure that you have the right network to get access to the patient, which is what we want.
Absolutely. Maybe Cintia and then Diane, I'd love to get your perspectives.
Yeah, very much agree. I think it is very important to take a step back and really aligning on what is it that we want to do, like what's the vision for who we want to be as an organization. So if you think about Adaptimmune, there was a decision made, okay, we want to be a fully integrated cell therapy organization. So that's what we want to do. And then from there, how do you think about what your core capabilities are, so then you can deliver that and do a really wonderful job with that. And what is not essential to that you could potentially partner. And obviously, depending on the resources that you have, it may be that you don't do that right away, and it is a timing also strategy that when you can afford, but to be able to get there. But I think as we think about it, a lot of the examples that Pascal brought in terms of what are the things that we want to build and keep, and what are some of the things that we want to partner, become more clear. And in our example, for example, the first product that we are bringing to market, which is a Famicell, We're hoping to submit the BLA by the end of the year and launch at the end of next year. It's a rare tumor, and so it gives us an opportunity to create a very focused and small commercialization platform and commercial model that is really customized for cell therapies and build those capabilities and then expand over time. Yeah. So we are doing it ourselves right now. We have our own manufacturing. However, whether we're going to partner to go to different countries, it's an opportunity. And also, as we expand into our next generation products, because we have studies going on in ovarian cancer, head and neck, gastroesophageal, so it's a lot bigger patient population, then how can we retain some of that cell therapy expertise, but partner, for example, for breath, which is something that we may not want to build or may not be a key core competence for us. And maybe one other piece of advice, because I've been part of many partnerships that have been very successful. I think that the choice of the partner, especially if you're choosing to commercialize a product with a partner, and work on the culture of the teams. Yeah. Because all the paperwork and the contracts are very complicated. But at the end of the day, I think if we really work together and see both companies as working around the same goal and that have aligned vision and purpose, it makes just a huge difference to get things moving. Otherwise, it becomes really complicated.
Excellent, excellent point. Diana, anything you want to add?
Well, I think it's been said really well by both Pascal and Cynthia, and I guess I would just say I agree with that, and I think there is a lot of pressure right now in the current economic market for small biotechs to consider partnerships because of the perception that that's non-dilutive, access to non-dilutive funding. But just remembering that if you partner away an asset, that is dilutive in a way. It may be dilutive in the long term should that asset be successful, but you really need to think through the bigger picture of who you want to be as a company, what are those core capabilities you want to build internally, and where are those places where you don't really want to build that, and that is a place that a partnership might make sense, and then who might those right partners be? And those partners will be generally companies that are aligned culturally, but also already appreciating the value of what you're bringing to the table. So there's no right answer. There's no menu or flow chart for how to do it. But and then of course it can change over time. But I think just like all small companies partner with either manufacturing organizations or testing organizations, it's good to consider the larger picture partnerships as well as an option.
Absolutely. So Paul, I want to come back to you. BMS is a fairly large organization. You could certainly do a lot of things on your own if you chose to. How do you think about outsourcing, working with partners, CROs, CDMOs? How do you approach that?
Yeah, the principle that we are building towards is reliable supply chain. So that typically is going to involve two sources of that activity, manufacturing, testing. We anticipate a mix, with having strong internal capabilities as foundation, but leveraging resources of external partners as well. And we're in different starting points for different portions of the value chain. Internal drug products manufacturing, we're fully internalized. I don't expect that to stay that way forever. And in vector, we're externalized, and I don't expect it to stay that way forever. I listened to Dimitri at Kite say they got their vector location approved recently and went, yay, he couldn't hold himself back. I'm waiting for that day too. Anyway, so it's going to be a mix. It's going to be really strong internal foundation and leverage capabilities with really, really strong partners with outstanding quality systems and where we can set up the right working relationships. Because there's always things, problems that will be solved that were not anticipated, and how do we connect and collaborate to make that happen?
Excellent. So now I want to pivot to sort of my last question. I'll ask each of you to comment, and if we do have time, maybe we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. But let's talk about the future. I mean, there's been so much progress, but obviously we're all here because we're excited about what the future will bring. And Diana, maybe I'll start with you. As you look out, where do you think we'll be in the next 5 to 10 years? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the chance to start here, because it reminds me of that first comment around the progress that's been made, and I see cell therapy as this tree that's growing, and now there are many different branches of that tree with autologous, but now allogeneic and different disease states, and I see that tree just continuing to grow, and buds and leaves forming, and I think that the future state in not too far away will be cell therapy becoming part of the really standard armamentarium for physicians to treat their patients, where it's no longer something specialized. There people think, oh, patients have to be in the ICUs. There may be some where they do, but for allogeneic therapy, like what we're doing at AlloVir, what I know Pascal is doing, you can give this therapy like in the outpatient setting. And what that means is you can move earlier in disease, and you no longer have to wait for somebody to be in a near-death-like state to then bring them back from the brink, but you can move to earlier lines of therapy in cancer, or even to prevention, as we're doing in one of our multivirus prevention studies, where you focus on wellness rather than salvage. And I think that's an incredible promise, and will benefit patients and society as a whole.
Excellent. Friedrich?
Yeah, I think we're gonna continue branching out for a while longer, because we have more work to do, right? So I think both on the innovation part, both on improving our products, both improving the technologies in order to make things work better, but then also on the clinical development side, right? As I said, we are now going to run randomized phase 3 trials. We are committed to start a frontline melanoma trial of Iovance tildafersen in combination with Keytruda in frontline melanoma patients. That's new. We're running a randomized controlled phase 3 trial, and there's going to be more of that. At the same time, we're bringing new products forward. I think, and we're going to branch into additional indications in tumor types. That's going to go on for a while, and I think at some point things will converge again. Things will become standard of care. The best elements of all of the therapies and all of the approaches that we have taken will be identified and proven, and someone will get around to combine them in one approach, and that will be what we take forward, but that's going to be a while. Don't ask me when. That's what I think is going to happen.
I hope sooner rather than later. Cintia?
Yes, no, I agree. And I think for me, for the next 5 to 10 years, definitely to see cell therapies reach more patients in the solid tumor space, and then reach more patients, in new indications, earlier lines of treatment, which are all things that we need to move forward with. In terms of new technologies, very excited about the Allo platform, but also advances in auto to, reduce turnaround time and all of the improvements in technology. And I think as I was reflecting on what is really exciting, because what we do is really super hard, right? And a couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity to join a dinner from the Sarcoma Foundation, which is a sarcoma patient organization, and we were being recognized for pursuing the sarcoma indication with cell therapies. And it was a truly humble experience to be there. We had several of us there and had the opportunity to hear directly from patients and from caregivers, and really the acknowledgement of all the work that we do in progressing the space and not giving up, and the importance of that. So it was just really, I think, a good reminder to just keep creating the space to give hope to patients, because that's what kept coming up and up again. So I think this opportunity to, yes, it's hard, but can we continue to provide this hope for patients and advance despite all the challenges? I think it's super exciting, and I can see that happening even more often.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the people in the industry. It's a bunch of determined, perhaps stubborn
right.
leaders who are sure we must make progress.
Right, exactly.
Pascal?
I agree with what has been said. Maybe just to add 3 aspects, one on science, one on clinical, and the other one on impact. I see many young scientists just in front of me, and I think there's still a lot of things we don't know about these cells. And the better understanding of the biology of the cells will allow us to better manufacture these cells, to really shape the biology of these cells, to really achieve what we want to achieve depending on the therapy. And there is a lot of progress to be there, so a lot of science. You have a lot of work ahead of you guys in terms of the next few years, because there's many things we don't know and we don't understand. So we need to progress there. And I see the 5 to 10 years to be in a situation where we'll be able to better fine-tune exactly what we are making and what's going to happen in patients. That's on the science front. On the clinical front, I think it's to go into an armamentarium, it was said already, in combination. Because of course, we have some obvious cases of cell therapy being the one and that's it type of therapy, but that's not going to happen every time in every disease, especially in solid tumors. So how are you going to combine to sequence treatment? There'll be a lot of progress over the next 5 to 10 years on clinical development. And in terms of impact is access to patients and getting into more patients. We started 10 years ago with a few, then 5 years ago it was a few hundred, now it's a few thousand, tens of thousands, going to be hundreds of thousands, millions of patients. How do you get that access? I think the next 5 to 10 years, at least we should be able to reach hundreds of thousands type of patients. And that's what I see. I hope.
Excellent. I love the vision that you're all setting. I can picture it. Paul?
Yeah, echoing all the comments, we sort of encapsulated on the statement of put more patients on a path to a cure. So put more cancer patients on a path to cure. So that means scaling with robustness, and how do we speed the pipeline? How do we pull that forward? And you know, it's an adventure, it's a journey, it's a lot of fun too along the way. It's humbling continuously, but it's also energizing when we get those wins as a team. So that's what I'm excited about.
Absolutely. Now, since we only have a couple of minutes left, I am going to wrap us up here, and I somewhat assume the panelists will be mobbed by people as soon as we close out here with additional questions. But first, I'd like to thank everyone on the panel. As expected, very thoughtful comments, and certainly very helpful, I hope, to everyone in the audience. So if I'm to summarize our discussion, cell therapy is not easy. There are many challenges in front of us, but despite that, look at the progress that has been made over the last 5 years. And certainly, if we just play that out for the next 5, it should be really amazing to see where the industry is at. And I thank each of you for all the work that you're doing, and I thank everyone in the audience for joining us this morning.